Okay, here we are. I'm trying to record on a tablet this time. This is a summary of what I've been working on for a couple of years or something. Now, on the left, you've got a whole bunch of words that are in a repeating loop that corresponds to the image in your right. And these words are attempts at representing a more textured form of meaning with our attachments to words. And they correspond to the positioning and the colors associated on the graphic on the right. So I will go into specific rows and talk about, okay, let's start with the graphic on the right. Abstract realm and aspect state. The abstract realms, as you can see, are this top row here, up here. And so they form circles of like a category. So it's a realm. And the realm of form is an abstract term to symbolize anything material. And also when it relates to the self later, if we say we have good form, it means that we have executed a intentional way to carry out our behavior, whether it's using our body later, and within form we execute precise movements. And that's what separates us from something more animalistic, let's say, where it's less of form and more of life. And so that you start to get the boundaries are crossed when I give examples between humans and animals, per se. And let's move over to life and body. So life embodies the abstract, life. It's all natural things. It's nature itself. It's the earth itself. It is all life. And body is in that realm because it's of life. It is not of the self, which is of form. I'm going to have to remember to do that. Moving on to flow and high being a state. So the circles in the middle ring, not the very center, but self, body, high. So these are aspect states. And I wonder if it helps to do this. The words are probably going to be way too small. Right, so the realm of flow is that more creative and intuitive, energetic state of being. So within the aspect states of the human experience, started with self, body, and now into high. High is denoting any kind of high energetic state where you're going with the flow. And moving over to love and soul, love being the realm and soul being the aspect state. I pause on soul now because it starts to build a picture of mind, body, soul as the initial trinity that you've heard, or mind, body, spirit. It's relating to mind being of the psyche, the body being of the physical nature, and soul being the ethereal, spiritual, mystical, intangible part of our essence. And so there it's of love as a broader concept. And so together they form that initial trinity that forms the kind of raw essences of us. Now, going back across from soul is the self. And the reason why I've used the color spectrum to lay these out is that they definitely feel like they belong within these color spectrums. Life representing green and soul representing orange, and self representing blue as well, especially when you look around to all the colored suits, for example. When you start seeing the world in this kind of orientation and referencing colors, you will very quickly see the formation of ego and self represented as blue across the world, and yellow being representing a creative and intuitive side, and more of grace and happiness and joy. So love and self, they are like polar, not opposites, but they are complementary. And I think the journey that I'm on, and many people are, the journey of getting to know yourself, the concept of it, the philosophy of it, the fundamentals of it, and learning about our attachments to ourself, and being able to distinguish the self from the you. And once you create space, then you're able to identify your ego within. And I'll get more into these anchor tags later on. But moving on from love, we have the abstract realm of fire, and the aspect of urge. And urge is opposite body, as more of a contrast between the fiery nature and powerful abilities within will, within the the area of choice and the determination and grit. It's definitely a force of nature, of power, and in contrast to life itself, where it is more of a unity, but not in the ethereal way of love and soul and God, but of the tangible, physical life of our planet, of our bodies, of our nature. And that's represented by age and will. Now, moving on to the last one, opposite from flow, we have time. Time being of the mind, and it doesn't really exist. Like with many things that we will come to realize, our tendency to give things form and then give things meaning, they are ways of making things real and understandable and to our control, and we're shaping ourselves as well as everything around us with amazing abilities. But it's the attachments and associations that we have within our mind, within ourself, and the two work together to create our ego and our wit. And these short words are, by the way, all of these words are just placeholders for a greater meaning. They've been shifting around and they'll continue to shift around and change, which is part of the reason why I've chosen the branding of this project being the resource project. So returning to source, and source is another word that fits under soul and love and God and oneness. So here we are full circle there. I want to pull up these anchor tags as an example of the inner circle here and start just giving a slightly clearer example of what I mean by these short words. So you in the very center is the essence of you outside of all of these colorful parts of us. It is the awareness, it's the watcher, it's space, it's the void, it's the zone. That one, I've been reluctant to give it any words at all, but it does help our mind to lock onto things in order to create space. But that just symbolizes the nothingness. And it can be scary because we like to attach to ourself via our ego. And we like to feel like we are solid and that things are definite and defined and separate and identifiable. Because that's how we communicate. That's how we go throughout life. Our sensory systems are always trying to distinguish what noise from what noise, what face from what person. So it's understandable how we are, but the process of discovery does revolve around the self and the ego, and the necessary journey to disengage, disconnect, create space, understand who ego is and who you are beneath it all. And through that awareness space in the middle, through awareness, we can start our journey. And my journey has been of studying the self. And I am anchored within this space between form and time, between ego and wit. And so it's the own. I'm anchored within this space of own. And now I'll move to the next slide here, which is now mentioning some of the anchor tags, as well as more of the blend aspect states in between what were previously the base components. And now we're going into a fuller core archetypes where it's not just 6, it's 12. And so we've got the base represented by self, body, high, soul, urge, and mind, and then the blend in between them. And we start to pair up different words. I can't have too many words, it will seem too cluttered and illegible and ugly. So let's start here on this side where I am basically living in most of the time. It's this own view, and own represents the ownership, the possession, the tendency to separate you from the other, and this whole concept of ownership and attachment. It's nonsense. We're born into this world, but we are assigned so many thought forms, and they are of the mind and of the self. It's a practice of formation, but somewhere we've taken it too far, and it is showing signs of reversing now with a broadening awareness of all of these wishy-washy terminologies, but they're all attempts at trying to better understand, so we can change to our preference and not be automatically held and anchored within a certain bandwidth, which is ultimately throttled and controlled by our environment and conditions. So, own view, so you can see how it's in your mind and of the self. And so now when we move over to the more physical aspect, the external interpretations and expressions, it's the mask, it's the role, it's an act. The whole external interface that we present to the world are a range of acts. And you can believe any of this or not, formulate arguments and whatever, but when you start seeing the acts that you play time and time again, you have your default act, and then you have various other acts. You go to work, you have that kind of persona. It's a role that you take on. You're a parent, you're a new parent, next to being an older parent. You act differently. You respond when someone triggers an emotion in your ego and challenges your view or challenges your ownership of your pride. And then you take on a new role and you act differently. And all of these egoic reactions are the interface of the self taking over the body to express different ways of communication. And all of these acts and all of these roles are just further reconditioning and reinstating the role of the self within your experience. And it just builds all of these egos. Moving on to R and mood. They're not the best words. I'll probably switch out R. But they represent a slight entering into truth. And it's a state of being where you just are, because you can be who you think you are, or you can be expected to act and behave like you think you are. But the fact of the matter is, when we do get emotional, the emotions are between the mind and the body, really, and of the self naturally. But they're experienced as physiological shifts in our body, in our chemistry. And yes, they might later on affect the act or the role that we play from our emotions, but in the moment, our moods just are, before the narrative, before the act, and before the ownership. So it's good to carefully pay attention to our body and our moods, because all of those count for painting a fuller picture of who we are at any given time, outside of the form and self. And so now we enter this space that's in contrast, polar opposite to own and view, is here and now. And when you are in your mind, you are in your view. And your view is usually of the self, returning to the self. But when you are here, between a state of high and a state of soul, it's outside of the ego, it's outside of the self, and outside of time and your mind. It's entering into formless being here, not here. And when you're at any moment in your experience, when you're utterly here, you could be in that space of nothingness, of just pure awareness. But here refers to that state of being next to joy and flow and high, where you're in a state of energized bliss and gratitude, as well as love and compassion and empathy, a oneness with the moment outside of time. It's now. And only now is somewhere where I want to visit more often if I can. So that, I guess, comes through lots of conditioning, and I have to practice meditation and stuff like that. But theoretically, it makes sense that that is outside of your own view of self and ego. And down next to soul and urge, love and fire, is that lust and sex. That fire, that blend of, let's say, passion and essence. And it's the yearning, it's the bond, the mystical desire, the partner. That's all the will of God. Our job is to reproduce, really. We don't really, like any organism, we're not meant to be living per single unit of organism, per iteration. We're meant to be of a species that passes on its genes and evolves over great lengths of time. But because we've become so efficient with how we behave, we have made everything on this side. And when it comes to the lust and the sex, it is often seen as dangerous and taboo and should be controlled and should have roles to play and acts to play when it comes to this side here. And much like the idea of high being described as getting too high from drugs or getting too high in your amount of dopamine that you're flooding your system with, the sex side is an absolute natural part of our being, but somehow it's not for some people's sensibilities of society. So it's between fire and love for good reason. But it's in opposition because we're so used to the proprietary side of form. And moving on between urge and mind, it's the goal, it's the aim, and that's in polar opposite position to the R, the being, the mood. Now, I know some friends who fluctuate between this kind of polarity here, being in a mood and then being driven by a goal and an aim, and never seeming to focus for too long without succumbing to another mood and going with the flow. And so you'll start to see people around you fit into these different color spectrums and fluctuate between different places And so when I ask you, where are you? Think about this graph here. Think of it as a map and compass to be able to very quickly refer to and point where you are in your current state of being and where you are anchored most of your time, most of your experience. Where are you held? Because part of this resource project is my personal journey, as well as I know it's a huge collective one, to study the self, study our mind, study everything about us. And when we do that, we realize the you that we think we are, the conditioning of the I, am, me, us, you, him, her, them, all of these titles and labels is just programming us to be in this side, to be of ego and of wit, give them more power, and not allow will to be untamed. It's being caged. It's being stressed out. We're not giving enough freedom to exercise our true will or exercise openness of love or freedom to just go where the wind blows you and get in touch with your spiritual side. It's more like we are given excuses or opportunities to connect with our body through ways of form. It's like we are backwards reverse engineering everything when it comes to movements and dance forms and connection to music and connection to each other. My time as a dancer has allowed me to connect more to my body, when in everyday life I would have to have only specific instances where I get to connect to my body. And even then, I'm probably not aware. I'm probably just stuck in my mind thinking about myself all day long, all night long, trapped in this conditioning. So as I've challenged and prodded and investigated and questioned, picked and prodded my way through my experiences and observations, both inner and outer, this is a half-hour long explanation of where I've gotten and the thought processes that have gotten me here. So this is just an ongoing body of work, really, and I will keep trying my best to vocalize it and to reach out, to connect to other people. But really, this is not and never was my work, because my is part of that ownership, the attachment to things. And I have to learn to let go, even though I have a very close relationship with this work that I have produced. It is from the echoes of everyone, now and from the past. So we need to get together and find ways to best communicate and understand on a common way. So these are two examples of my attempts to help people do that, help me do that, and help everyone else. So yeah, I'll just leave it there, and I look forward to getting the confidence to keep pressing onwards and just being the best version of Mark that I can.